Like many people, I've been walking the dog a lot. And last week, from a safe social distance, I saw an old woman standing outside of her car and next to the school with her camera pointed downward. But all that I saw there were dandelions. Dandelions. So I said to her, "Oh, you're taking pictures of dandelions." And she replied, "Yes, some of them are so beautiful." And then she said, "And my dog needs exercise." I could identify with that, but what struck me funny was that her dog was in the car. How lovely, though, to look at dandelions with a new eye. One person could see a common weed, and another person can see beauty. And I thought about how in the gospel, according to John, our text for today, Jesus says, "I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly." It's filled with hope and love and gratitude, and it would be just like Jesus to see beauty in common places and in people just like us who consider ourselves more ordinary than extraordinary most of the time. This is the fourth Sunday in Easter, and when we follow the lectionary, we realize that year after year, there's always a reading about Jesus as the shepherd. And it's not the first time in the scriptures that the image of shepherd comes up. That view of God caring for the flock is associated with God's own holy nature, God caring for us in ways that make a difference in our lives. And it's why we so love Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Maybe in this time, in these unusual circumstances, we need this image of God tending us, gathering us in, bringing us safely home. So before we return to John's Gospel, I'd like to share with you this new and innovative translation of Psalm 23 in Eugene Peterson's translation called The Message. "God, my shepherd, I don't need a thing. You have bedded me down in lush meadows. You find me quiet pools to drink from. True to your word, you let me catch my breath and send me in the right direction. Even when the way goes through Death Valley, I'm not afraid when you walk by my side. Your trusty shepherd's crook makes me feel secure. You serve me a 6-course dinner right in front of my enemies. You revive my drooping head. My cup brims with blessing. Your beauty and love chase after me every day of my life. I'm back home in the house of God for the rest of my life." We know that Psalm 23 was among the scriptures that Jesus had, and so he knew the positive images of shepherd and the care of shepherds, and he also knew the negative ones, like in the prophet Ezekiel, when the leaders are called on the carpet for serving their own interests rather than caring for the community. And we remember, too, that the work of shepherds was considered lowly and even dirty, making their presence at Jesus' birth all the more astounding. God called the lowly. God called people of every class and background. God calls us today. The image of shepherd carried some baggage, but at its best, it conveys that self-giving love and hard work and tenderness. No wonder Jesus contrasts the shepherd with the thief and the bandit. The shepherd is known and has the best interests of the sheep at heart. That is what Jesus wants to convey to us. We so love this image that we often call ordained clergy pastor and the work of caring for congregations' pastoral care. But we say that with humility because we know that Christ is uniquely the shepherd, and all of us are his flock. There is no hierarchy, and that is why we return to the affirmation, the Lord is my shepherd. The thief can be anything that robs us of our humanity. Addiction is a thief, and we lament that in difficult times like this one, sometimes there's an overdose, an increase in overdoses. Poverty is a thief, and we see that with so many people struggling with food insecurity, and we do our very best to reach out to try to make it possible for people to be fed and cared for and loved in the manner that we are called to do by our holy God. Racism is a thief, and in the inequality made visible by COVID-19, we see the terrible suffering in the number of people of color who are dying. The co-chair of Troy Area United Ministries, Martin Luther King Committee, told me that she knows an African-American congregation that has lost 9 people to the virus. I pray that we will come through this time with a commitment to do whatever we can to eradicate poverty and injustice and suffering. It is our profound affirmation and a sign of Christian hope that we hold on to Jesus' promise of abundant life at such a time like this. He still says to us, I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. He says that into any struggle or falsehood that would tell us that we are not worth it, Jesus says instead, my sheep know my voice. I call them by name. They are mine. Do not forget who you are, beloved of God. In the Easter story, which was not so long ago, if perhaps this year or another year recently you've read the Gospel according to John, John's telling of the Easter story, and we know in that famous text that Mary thinks Jesus is the gardener. Now, I was outside of your church building and I saw the beautiful tulips and hyacinth and daffodils in bloom, and that image of Jesus as a gardener is indeed a lovely one. So she thinks he's the gardener, and then he calls her name. He says, Mary, and she recognizes him. And Jesus says to us, I have called my sheep by name. They are mine. And he also says, I am the gate. This is one of his I am sayings. Already in this gospel, he has said, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. And suddenly in this reading, he goes from shepherd to gate. I am the gate. And we come to Christ with humility, knowing that we don't claim any exclusive privilege. Our call is to service. And so we don't say, the Lord is our gatekeeper, therefore we're the privileged ones. The Lord is our gatekeeper, therefore we're the ones called to serve in the manner of Jesus. And the interesting thing about shepherds is they often slept across the opening to the sheep herd, therefore providing comfort and protection, being both the gate and the shepherd, the protector and the caregiver. And that in itself is a humble image. Who Jesus is, who we know him to be, who we encounter him as in the scriptures, determines who the faith community is. What does it mean to be Jesus' sheep? Isn't that a life question that we keep asking as we know that we are called to emerge from this with greater compassion and a stronger sense of community and greater generosity toward others? A Presbyterian colleague of mine, the Reverend Dr. Susan Andrews, said, my friends, Amidst all the voices, there is a voice, making us lie down by still waters, leading us with vision on paths of righteousness, walking with us in the darkest valley of our living. But we must listen, and we must learn, and we must follow. That is our hope, and that is our calling. Amen.